Hi everyone, Mr. Neighbor here, and we're still working on how to find percents of a number. So we've done a couple examples. We're going to do a few more here. So we're going to look at here 40% of 70. So we have a couple different methods. One method we have is to look at things in groups of 10%. Okay, that's one method we've been using. Another method we've been using is to kind of think about it as fractions. So this is a quarter of 180, and maybe that is more helpful to you, is to think about it as fraction terms. So fractions are another method we can use. And, oops, I was jumped in 4. But the third method we can use is just multiplication. The word of in math means multiply, of by itself. Out of, that is not multiplication. The word of by itself is. So we could just do the multiplication of those two numbers. Multiply. All right, so let's work with some of these methods right now. 40%. So that's really like saying 40 parts out of 100. So if we do the 10% method, what is 10% of 70? That would just be 7. 7, 10 times will give you 70. I have 4 of these. So this times 4 will give me 40%. This times 4 will give me the number that is 40% of 70. So 7 times 4 would give me 28. So 28 out of 70 is 40%. The other way, fractions. 40 out of 100, that's just like 4 out of 10 if I divide both numerator and denominator by 10. And that is just like 2 out of 5. So what is 2/5 of 70? It's a little bit more difficult to do it like that, but we can. I'm just going to write it as 2/5 times 70. I really like to work with fractions, and it's really nice with 5s because 5s divide by numbers that are multiples of 10. So 70 divided by 5 should give me out 14. But now I have to multiply that by 2. So simplifying this, I'm taking 70 divided by 5, and then I'm multiplying that by 2 afterwards. So 70 divided by 5 is 14. Now I want to multiply by 2, which gives me out 28. Same answer. And then the last method is multiply. So remember, I got to change 40% into a number, which is the decimal 0.40, or 40 hundredths. 40 hundredths, just like the fraction. So we have 70 times 0.4. I don't really need to write that 0. It's irrelevant, so I'm just going to eliminate it because I'm just going to have a bunch of zeros otherwise. So 4 times 0 is 0. 4 times 7 is 28. The decimal point is already on the right side for the 70, so I don't need to move anything down here. But the 0.4 is not on the right side yet, so that means I have to move it once. So over here, I have to move it once the opposite way. So my final answer, again, is just 28. Okay, let's just do one more. We'll do 55% of 160. So the 10% way, actually, let me pick a different color since I tend to get very close together here. Oh, blue. 10%. 10% of 160, just divide that by 10, which is 16. I have 5 of those. So there's another 16, another 16, another 16, and another 16. So that's my 50%. But I need 55%. So there's a 5% I have to calculate. If I know 10%, 5% is fairly easy because I'll just divide this in half to get 5%. So divide the 16 in half to figure out what that's going to be, which would be 8. Okay, so adding all these numbers up will give you what 55% of 160 is. I like to count by eights though, because I'm not a good counter of 16. So I know it's 8, 16, 24, 32. Apparently I'm not a very good counter of eights either. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 eights. So that would be 88. I was splitting those 16s into eights. So fractions, this is 55 out of 100. I could divide both these numbers by 5 if I wanted to. So that would give me 11 20ths. And that's about the simplest fraction I can get. So I would have to take 11 over 120 or over 20 times 160. I know that 160 divided by 20 is 8. And then I still have to multiply by the numerator, which would give me 88 again. And then lastly, we could do the multiplication. I'm going to skip that because I think a lot of people are very, very comfortable with that. So moving on, we're just going to look at things slightly different. Sometimes you may have a percent that is actually greater than 100%. So what that means is you have a bucket, it's completely full of water, and then it overflowed. How much did it overflow? Or how much water do you have compared to the original? So let's say this is 70 gallons of water, or sorry, 75 gallons of water, but you have 120% of that. So you filled a bucket all the way full. So you have 75. Oops. Let's erase some of that. And then you have another bucket just like it, and you filled it up 20%. So you can do this a couple different ways, using the same methods we've used up there. Think of a percent that you know really well. Well, I really know 100% well. I know that 100% would be 75. Now I just got to figure out what 20% is. So if I can figure out what 20% is, I'll just add that to the 75. So I don't know what 20% is, but I do know what 10 is. It's always that number divided by 10. So that'll give me 7.5. And I need 2 of those to make up my 20%. So 2 7.5s would be the number 15. Add that to my 100% of 75, and I will get out the number 90. You also can do it in terms of 1%. I don't think that's very quick for this one. You can work in terms of fractions. So this is talking about a fraction of 120 out of 100. If I divide both by 10, I will get 12 over 10. And I can divide both those by 2 to get 6 over 5. So I'm working with 6 over 5, multiplying that by 75. So 75 divided by 5, that would be 1, 3, 13. Which would be 15. And then 15 times 6 would be 90. So we still get out 90 for an answer. And lastly, if you want to do the multiplication, 120% is the number 1.20. So you're going to take 75 and multiply that by 1.2. And when you do that, you will get out 90. So in either case, all 3 methods work, and it still is just like the ones above. But now we're just working with percents that are greater than 100. So if I look at 150%, that would be the number 1.5, 160, 1.6, and so on and so forth. But they work the same way. So hopefully you now know how to calculate percents in a variety of different ways.